Welcome to Two Beans in a Pod. Today, we are addressing the profound anxiety that seems to be gripping the global economy, really driven by this AI investment frenzy. I mean, this fervor has inflated the Magnificent Seven, the Mag 7, to, frankly, unprecedented valuations, fueling concerns that we are standing in a speculative bubble, maybe like 2000 or maybe even 2008.
The scale of investment is, it's absolutely historic. But, history does teach us that technological revolutions, they often require massive front-loaded capital. And that often leads to temporary market turbulence, right?
Right. Which brings us, I think, to our core question today. Is the true immediate crisis of this AI boom the future threat of widespread job replacement? The worry about what AI might do in 5 or 10 years? Or is it the systemic economic risk and, frankly, the colossal resource consumption being driven right now by financial engineering that looks, opaque and maybe unsustainable?
That distinction really shifts the focus, doesn't it? From the technology itself to the financial structures around it.
Precisely. And my position is that the immediate danger lies right there, in the structural flaws, the hidden debt, and just the sheer consumption of capital and physical resources. This whole economic machine, it feels like it's consuming value and stability faster than it's generating any kind of legitimate productivity we can measure.
Okay, I come at it from a different angle. While, market overheating is probably inevitable in these cycles, I see this capital influx as necessary overinvestment ahead of demand. It's maybe chaotic, sure, but it feels like an essential phase required for a truly transformative technology. So I'd contend that the eventual long-term reality of mass job alteration and replacement, that remains the greatest societal challenge. And this financial turbulence is, maybe just the cost of getting there.
Okay, let's ground this consumption argument in the financial structure itself. My perspective is that the current AI boom is built on what many analysts are starting to identify as a kind of closed system of circular investment. It feels like artificial growth, an illusionary loop where money flows heavily, maybe even exclusively, between just a few dominant players. It creates revenue on paper, sure, but without corresponding external customer value being generated.
Okay, circular finance. Yeah, it can be inefficient, I grant you that. But where's the systemic risk you're pointing to? I mean, these are incredibly powerful companies. They have existing strong core cash flows, unlike, say, the pure startups of the dot-com bubble. That seems like a key difference.
The systemic risk is buried, and I think it's buried intentionally. I mean, look at the high-profile flow people talk about. Nvidia, right? The dominant chip supplier. They provide massive capital infusions. We're talking tens of billions, maybe even that reported $100 billion figure, to, say, OpenAI. OpenAI then uses that money to lease or buy specialized hardware, primarily from Nvidia. It's essentially revenue generated by self-funding your own supply chain. That feels like consumption masquerading as legitimate market demand.
You could also frame that as strategic alignment, couldn't you? Or vertical integration. It could just be an effective way to seed a necessary, still nascent market until genuine external demand catches up.
Well, I think it goes deeper than just strategic alignment. And this is where the parallels to 2008 start to feel, frankly, alarming. This new AI infrastructure market, it seems to be hiding billions in corporate debt off the main balance sheets. How? Through these things called special purpose vehicles, or SPVs. They're essentially like shell companies set up to isolate risk. But here they seem to be funneling investment and obscuring liabilities on a massive scale. That recent, $20 billion structure associated with XAI, that's a pretty high-profile example.
But those structures, SPVs, they are legal instruments. They're designed specifically to manage high-risk, high-reward ventures like this.
Oh, they're legal, absolutely. But their opacity, that's what creates a vulnerability. The debt held in these SPVs, it's often secured by hardware, specifically GPUs, which, as we know, depreciate incredibly fast. This creates a kind of leverage mismatch that really echoes the synthetic collateralized debt obligations, the CDOs, that were at the heart of the 2008 crisis. The collateral itself, the GPUs, they can become obsolete and, well, almost worthless every 18 to 24 months because of Moore's law and just the relentless pace of technological iteration.
Okay, I see why you emphasize the risk of that rapidly depreciating collateral. That's a fair point. But let me offer a different perspective here. This massive capital expenditure, projections are talking about $3 trillion just by 2028. This is a classic feature, isn't it, of every foundational technology cycle. Think about the initial construction of the rail system, the deployment of the electricity grid, even the fiber optic build-out back in the late 90s. All of those involved necessary, absolutely immense overinvestment. They led to market corrections, sure, but they fundamentally enabled transformation in the long run.
The difference, though, is that railroads and power plants, those were built on tangible, long-lived assets. Here, the underlying collateral basically vanishes in a couple of years.
Well, I might argue the collateral isn't just the physical chip. It's also the intellectual property, the trained model itself, the data architecture. Those things arguably have longer-term value. Look, we have to consume capital now, I believe, to build the foundation for the eventual reality of widespread job alteration. If we believe that artificial general intelligence, AGI, is, as many industry leaders are claiming, in sight, then the need for millions upon millions of high-end GPUs, that starts to look validated as a non-negotiable cost.
But that eventual reality, it requires a demonstrable return on investment that justifies the current level of consumption. And the evidence we have now shows that something like 95% of generative AI pilots in established companies are failing to yield any measurable profit or loss impact. That money is just being consumed, burned, to train models that aren't actually delivering practical value yet. It feels like purely speculative investment based on what might happen someday, not what is happening now.
And that's where we fundamentally diverge, I think. You view this financial opacity and speculative spending as guaranteeing collapse, whereas I view the sheer scale of the investment as actually confirming the transformative necessity of the technology, even if the deployment phase is, well, messy and chaotic.
Okay, let's circle back to the structure, because I think the core issue isn't just chaotic growth.
It feels like systemic deception driven by that financial structure. When you have debt secured by rapidly depreciating GPU hardware, held via these opaque SPVs, the collateral can just evaporate before the long-term debt matures. That's almost the definition of a leverage mismatch, isn't it? It's very similar to how those illiquid, poorly secured mortgages underpin the CDOs back in 2008. And regulators, the public, we seem blind to the actual leverage ratios involved here.
That's a serious claim regarding the financial structure, and I do agree the opacity is problematic. It needs scrutiny. However, I do question the level of panic surrounding the overall scale. You referenced some analysts suggesting this AI bubble is, 17 times larger than the dot-com crisis? How are they even quantifying that? The dot-com bubble was largely driven by purely speculative, often revenue-less startups. The Mag 7, which now concentrate, 37% of the S&P 500 market cap? These are high cash flow, profit-generating entities for the most part. Their market dominance surely reflects their ability to deploy capital for a legitimate technological shift that smaller, riskier firms simply cannot.
But the size isn't just about market cap in isolation. It's about the dependence of the entire financial ecosystem on these few, very high PE ratio stocks. Stocks whose valuations absolutely depend on massive future productivity increases that, as we've said, just haven't materialized yet. So you have this intense market control tied to potentially obscure debt. That feels like a dangerous form of consumption that risks guaranteeing a truly catastrophic correction. Imagine if Nvidia or one of the major cloud providers were to fail because of exposure to bad SPV debt. The ripple effect on global indices could be, unprecedented.
That's an interesting point, although I might frame it differently. Market dominance is somewhat inherent in these big tech cycles, isn't it? And these SPVs, regardless of their opacity, are allowing massive infrastructure deployment to proceed. The technology itself, I maintain, is not an illusion.
its disruptive power remains robust, even if we accept that valuations might need a temporary, maybe even significant correction. So the question back to you is, why are you so quick to dismiss the actual technological gains that are being made?
Because the gains as they're currently priced into the market don't seem to be materializing broadly. Let's talk about the productivity paradox directly. The market is pricing in revolutionary human replacement effectively. Yet, enterprise AI ROI, the actual return on investment, it's currently averaging maybe 6%? That's hardly revolutionary.
Okay, but maybe we should look beyond just the current functionality of, say, consumer-facing chatbots. Enterprise AI ROI might be modest now. And yeah, developers using generative AI, Gen I, they might see only marginal initial productivity increases. However, the argument for eventual replacement-level disruption is still credible, because even a small, widespread productivity increase, if it's compounded across the entire global economy over, say, a decade, that leads to massive structural changes. There is real work being done here. The technology is solving complex problems in niche areas already, which proves its direction of travel, its potential.
See, I'm just not convinced by that line of reasoning, mainly because some evidence suggests returns might actually be diminishing rapidly with scale, not growing linearly or exponentially. The fundamental technical approach of large language models, LLMs, seems to have hit some serious limitations. When you scale up these LLMs, they suffer from increased hallucinations, which is a major problem, and they fundamentally fail to achieve true reasoning or understanding.
Okay, maybe define hallucinations quickly for our audience. And why do you see that as a fatal technical flaw rather than, say, just an engineering problem that can eventually be solved?
Sure. A hallucination is essentially when the model confidently makes things up, facts, data, source citations, because its underlying architecture is primarily optimized for predicting the next word in a sequence, not for actually understanding or verifying reality. And this, I argue, is an inherent flaw in the current approach, and it's precisely why we see that staggering 95% pilot failure rate in enterprises. Businesses just cannot rely on a system that routinely fabricates critical data. So the high PE ratios we see, Nvidia at 47.6, Tesla way up at 202.8 projected for 2025, these feel based purely on imagined future profits from successful human replacement, while the massive capital expenditure is simply being consumed today by training models that might be fundamentally architecturally limited.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the current technical limitations definitively prove consumption over replacement. We are seeing demonstrable, high-value replacement happening in specialized sectors already. Look at computational biology or pharmaceutical discovery. Specialized AI models there are dramatically accelerating things like protein folding and drug target identification, work that previously took years and years of human labor. These niche applications are generating measurable value, and that, I think, justifies the enormous investment in the foundational models, even with their flaws. The models themselves are valuable intellectual property, and even if they hallucinate now, the race is on to iterate past those flaws. The capital being spent is necessary precisely to iterate past those limitations.
Well, that may be true for a few highly specialized, perhaps non-public domains, but the core economic consumption argument, the broad-based argument, remains. And while all that capital circulates in these potentially artificial loops, the consumption isn't just financial, is it? It's becoming literal physical consumption with quite severe environmental costs attached.
That's a fair point, and it's certainly a heavy cost to consider.
You're listening to Two Beans in a Pod. If you're finding this debate insightful, please take a moment to like this episode and subscribe so you don't miss future discussions.
Yeah, I mean, consider just the infrastructure strain. These AI data centers are putting severe pressure on the U.S. energy grid. Current projections, quite startlingly, indicate they could consume maybe 12% of all U.S. electricity by 2028. And that's just the power consumption. They are also guzzling scarce fresh water for cooling. That's a direct and immediate environmental consumption that seems to be completely masked, or at least overshadowed by the speculative financial bubble right now.
That's a compelling argument. Absolutely. But have you perhaps considered the geopolitical imperative that might be underpinning this level of consumption? The U.S. and its allies, they are engaged in what many frame as an existential bet to win the AI race, particularly with China. So the immense consumption of capital and physical resources, while undoubtedly costly, is viewed by policymakers, by industry titans, as maybe the only non-negotiable path to securing dominance in AGI, in artificial general intelligence.
But that geopolitical framing, it creates yet another consumption loop, doesn't it? Almost an artificial scarcity loop. Think about the US export controls on advanced chips. They certainly created artificial scarcity and drove premium pricing for Nvidia chips globally. This, in turn, drives complex regulatory arbitrage models like that Nebius model operating out of Amsterdam people talk about, where global capital is effectively drained just to access the necessary compute power. It feels like it reinforces the bubble and directs capital away from potentially widespread beneficial economic applications towards an extremely narrow, high-stakes geopolitical competition.
I might see that more as a strategic consumption of resources, though. It shifts the discussion, perhaps rightly, from simple market greed to a high-stakes, nation-level investment strategy. The purpose then isn't merely profit in the short term. The purpose is securing the fundamental intellectual capabilities that many believe will define global power in the future. And if successful, that AGI capability will fundamentally replace human intellectual labor on a scale we probably can't even measure right now. Therefore, the argument goes, the consumption now is justified by the future necessity of achieving that replacement goal.
But what if the financial system itself, which appears to be consuming itself right now via concealed debt and circular finance, what if that collapses first? Then that technological promise, however grand, might just go unfulfilled. That potential systemic economic crash, perhaps fueled by this opaque GPU debt, feels like it poses a far greater immediate risk than the longer-term job replacement scenario you're focused on.
And yet, the counter-argument is, if we underinvest or if we halt this massive capital deployment now, based primarily on these immediate financial fears, we risk losing the long-term potential for disruption entirely, and perhaps we can see the technological future to competitors. It's a dilemma.
So, to summarize my position, it remains clear to me that the immediate and perhaps most pressing crisis is not really about AI's potential to replace us sometime in the future. It's about the very real financial and environmental cost of the bubble that is consuming the economy and our physical resources right now. The unsustainable structures, the circular finance, the hidden debt, they threaten a systemic crash that we seem structurally unprepared for at the moment.
And my summary is that while yes, the market is certainly overheated, and the financial opacity is a significant risk that absolutely must be monitored and probably addressed, this capital consumption is likely a necessary, albeit maybe chaotic and messy phase of overinvestment. It's investment in a technology that remains, I believe, profoundly transformative. The sheer scale of investment reflects the industry's and perhaps the nation's commitments delivering that job replacement disruption, which in the long run remains the fundamental societal challenge we'll have to face.
Well, the material certainly reveals that our economic dependence on this technology, which is still largely unproven in broad application, means we really have to grapple with both threats, don't we? The specter of immediate market consumption and the longer-term reality of technological replacement, perhaps simultaneously.
Indeed. And the debate over which threat arrives first and ultimately carries the greater consequence, well, that's far from settled. There's clearly more to explore here.
Thank you for listening to Two Beans in a Pod.